welcome. I am Amarachi Ubani. Tonight, two separate courts give conflicting judgments on the governorship tussle in Abia State, while an Abuja court rejects stay of execution and a Owerri court affirms Ikpeazu as governor. PDP leadership crisis yet to abate as McCarthy-led caretaker committee demands arrest of Ali Modu Sheriff. Boko Haram remains unrelenting, attacks Damboa town in Borno State, killing 8 people. And more trouble in Dallas in the U.S. 5 Dallas police officers are killed by a sniper during a march against the shooting of black men by police.
And in business news tonight, House Speaker warns 2008 stock market misbehavior revisited.
And in sports news, Andy Murray aims for a 3rd Grand Slam title as he dispatches Thomas Berdych to reach the Wimbledon final.
Federal High Court in Abuja has ordered a stay of proceeding in the case of false tax declaration filed against Governor Ikpeazu of Abia State. Justice Okun ordered the stay of proceedings in the case pending the outcome of an appeal filed by Governor Ikpeazu following the nullification of the governor's election by the courts. However, in a separate application filed by the People's Democratic Party seeking a stay of proceedings, Justice Abang said there is nothing to say or nothing to stay, since his judgment has been carried out by the issuance of certificate of return to Mr. Uche Oga. Our correspondent Amaka Okafo reports.
The hearing of several applications emanating from the judgment of Justice Okun Abang sacking Governor Ikpeazu of Abia State continued at the Federal High Court. Ruling on an application filed by Governor Ikpeazu, Justice Okun Abang affirmed jurisdiction to entertain the application, but said the governor should not have rushed to the Court of Appeal when the lower court is not done with the case. Justice Abang also ordered a stay of proceedings in the case pending the decision of the Court of Appeal, saying the court's decision to adjourn the proceedings is based on the concession by counsel to Uche Oga, Dr. Alex Ezeon. Chief Wale Olanipekun, the counsel to Ikpeazu, had earlier argued that the Federal High Court lacks the jurisdiction to take any further decision since the matter is on appeal. For Mr. Ezeon, who is representing Oga, had urged the court to dismiss the argument of his colleague because the court cannot keep a blind eye to the abuse of its orders. He, however, withdrew his submission and conceded to the appeal. In a separate application filed by the People's Democratic Party seeking a stay of execution of the court's judgment, Justice Abang held that there was no judgment to arrest because his judgment has been carried out and certificate of return issued to Mr. Oga, the beneficiary of the judgment. He held that by that action, his judgment still stands until it is set aside by the appeal court. The parties in the suit had different interpretations of the various rulings delivered by the court.
The last ruling was very clear that the judge said that his order still remains and remains valid until set aside by the Court of Appeal. I think that is what should be the bottom line.
Dr. Ikpeazu had appealed and he has several applications pending at the Court of Appeal. With the pendency of that application at the Court of Appeal, there is really absolutely nothing to determine at the High Court level. So the issue of injunction or stay ultimately between Dr. Ikpeazu and Dr. Oga must be determined by the Court of Appeal.
The court had at the last sitting adjourned till Thursday the 7th of July to hear Ikpeazu's application to stay execution of its judgment and to also hear the application to set aside the ruling of the Abia State High Court which prevented the Chief Judge from swearing in Mr. Oga, and also an application seeking to set aside the order to issue certificate of return to Mr. Oga. Amaka Okafo, Channels Television News.
In the meantime, another Federal High Court has affirmed that Governor Ikpeazu's tax documents were not forged. Justice Ambrose Alagoa of the Federal High Court in Owerri also held that the election of Governor Ikpeazu of Abia State is valid. Ruling on the matter filed by Mr. Friday Mosu against Governor Ikpeazu, Uche Oga, PDP and INEC on alleged forgery of tax documents by Governor Ikpeazu, The court ruled that the plaintiff, Mr. Nwosu, was unable to prove that the tax documents were forged. A federal high court sitting in Abuja has dismissed a court action seeking to unseat national and state assembly members representing Anambra State. Justice Adebiyi Ademola dismissed the suit instituted by Senator Annie Okonkwo, Chris Uba and 42 others for lacking merit. In the judgment that lasted an hour, Justice Ademola said the claim of the plaintiffs that they are rightfully nominated candidates of the People's Democratic Party cannot stand in the face of the law, having been unlawfully nominated by the state's executive party.
The issue which we brought to the court for determination is whether INEC can remove, substitute, or by any means tamper with the name of candidates already submitted to it and published as candidates of the party before election without an order of court. That was the issue we submitted to court. All those issues, the court today did not touch on it, it did not rule on it, had no reasoning on it, but it concluded that they had become academic.
The judgment just delivered is a very sound judgment, I must tell you. And all the apprehensions that existed before now have been decimated. You know, the judge took time to analyze. He formulated 4 issues and dealt with the 4 issues, resolving the 4 issues in favor of the defendants, who are the legislators at the National Assembly and State Assembly as at today. The issues formulated, the 4, had to do with who actually has the responsibility of nominating candidates and submitting the list to the National Assembly. And the court reinforced that the judgments of the Supreme Court as postulated in Emenike versus PDP, Odedo, and the rest, Emeka versus Okadibo. These judgments, the Supreme Court has been very consistent that it is a national executive of a political party that submits names.
Staying with legal matters, relying on the recent judgment by a federal high court in Port Harcourt, the People's Democratic Party's caretaker committee, led by Senator Ahmed Makarfi, has called for the arrest of factional leader Senator Ali Modu Sheriff for contempt of court. Spokesperson for the committee, Mr. Dayo Adeyeye, told journalists in Abuja that the issuance of a certificate of return to a parallel candidate by the Sheriff Group is illegal.
The leadership crisis in the People's Democratic Party took a new dimension when the faction led by Senator Ali Modu Sheriff of the People's Democratic Party issued a certificate of return to a parallel candidate in the forthcoming governorship election in Edo State. Following that event, the caretaker committee of the party is calling for the arrest of Senator Sheriff.
The main fundamental judgment which came from Black Court on Monday was to defend that, look, even if your tenure has not ended, are you getting the sequence? You have now been removed by Port Harcourt by convention. There's no way for him to stand by all these judgments. So for him now to ask that he will issue a certificate of return to a candidate to a purported candidate of PDP, in which is no longer holding any position, is a contempt of these judgments, and we believe he should be arrested for it.
But Senator Sheriff's faction insists it has not acted in contempt of the court.
Alhaji Amodu Sheriff has 4 other subsisting judgments in his favor. And if anybody is to be arrested, it is the Adeyeye.
Several efforts to resolve the crisis have failed as members drag each other to various courts. The Makarfi faction of the party says judgments by these courts must be obeyed as both groups work to resolve the impasse.
While we are making every effort to ensure that we have a final peaceful resolution to these matters, we also say that all parties to this matter, all members of this PDP, and indeed all Nigerians, must obey the rule of law.
There are 2 state elections in Edo and Ondo that the PDP is expected to participate in the next few months. Political watchers say the current crisis may impact on the performance of the party in the coming polls.
The Minister of State for Petroleum Resources, Dr. Ibe Kachukwu, has been speaking on key areas his predecessor must focus on to achieve the desired development in the nation's oil and gas sector. Some of them include maintaining the deregulation policy ensuring product availability and prompt audits of its financial reports. Dr. Kachukwu, who gave this advice while handing over to the newly appointed Group Managing Director of the Nigeria National Petroleum Corporation, also wants the NNPC boss to remain apolitical.
We have top officials of the Nigerian National Petroleum Corporation at an event to officially mark the change of leadership in the affairs of the corporation. The former Group Managing Director of the NNPC, Dr. Ibe Kachukwu, is first to speak. He reels out what he describes as some of his achievements in the past 11 months, and one of such is a 270 million naira profit made by the corporation.
The fact that NNPC does bear a huge amount of societal burden in trying to provide services is not a reason why it must be a loss-making entity in perpetuity. I am happy to announce that your May results for the first time in the history of this company showed a 270 million profit.
Besides that, there are key areas he wants the new head to focus on.
It is important that the third-party audit by PwC, I think, must be completed so that if there are amounts due to the Federation, we balance that off the amounts that are due NNPC from the Federation, and I'll be there willing to work with you to ensure that at the end of the day there's a reconciliation that enables us to know whether NNPC owes the Federation or the Federation owes NNPC, and close this issue once and for all.
On what can best be described as an 11-point agenda, the new GMD lists out his areas of priority for improving revenue accruing from the sector.
To create an all-inclusive internal advisory council on security, comprising of representatives of NNPC, the IOCs, unions, and security operatives, to brainstorm and come up with suggestions that will discuss security and host community agitations.
The nation's oil and gas sector has for some time now come under serious criticisms and attacks. It remains to be seen if the new man at the helm of affairs here will tackle the myriad of challenges head-on in the days ahead.
To other issues in the oil industry, Pengasson members have called fresh attention to the Petroleum Industry Bill. The PIB, a bill when passed, will become a reference law that governs the Nigeria National Petroleum Industry from the upstream division through the midstream down to the downstream. The bill was conceived shortly after former President Olusegun Obasanjo assumed office in his first term. He set up a committee called the Oil and Gas Industry Committee, mandated to look at a comprehensive law for the Nigerian oil and gas industry. Till date, that law is still not passed by the National Assembly. So what's been the challenge in the passage of this law, which is now a point of threat for the Pengasson fight? I'm being joined now with the News at 10 by a former lawmaker, Honorable West Idahosa. He joins us from our studios in Abuja. Honorable Idahosa, thank you so much for joining us on the News at 10 tonight. Now, you were in the House of Representatives.
Thank you very much.
Great to have you. You were in the House of Representatives at the time the former president set up this committee to make a law for the oil industry. Is there a reason why this bill has still not been passed?
Well, as you do know, the country is running a mono economy, and that means that this is probably the most important piece of legislature that can come into a legislation that can come into existence. The significant point I would like to make here is that a number of interests have been at cross purposes. For example, you do know that the bill as it is conceived was set up to add value to the industry. But after that, many forces began to come to play. The first was that who would share the proceeds arising from the product, and how will it be shared? There was a host community fund set up, and 10% of the net profit was proposed for that fund. What will happen to the other parts of the federation that were not considered as host communities?
And those,
so I think that was where the real political networking
Those are the challenges, I guess, that the 8th Assembly has to look into. Thank you so much for joining us tonight, Honorable Western Host. I do wish we had more time, but that's where we have to leave it. And we're part 2 after the break. NNPC warns against panic buying, saying it is stock to last over a month. Please stay with us.